There we go. Okay, so I think we might still have another couple of people joining. So they've got access to join, so we'll just let them trickle through as we go. But nice to see you all today. So thank you so much for joining us for Stay Nimble's Modern Women Managing Social Pressures webinar. So I'm Jennifer Harper, I'm Head of Coaching here at Stay Nimble. And we're running today's webinar in association with the JUSER Global Business School and University of East London, who we are delivering the Stay Nimble MBA with. And we had hoped to have Caroline Raffi with us, who is the JUSER Global Business School's VP of Enterprise. Unfortunately, she's been called away with work commitments. She's in Australia, of all places, so lucky her. But we do hope to have her with us for one of our future webinars. I know that she was keen to take part in this topic. She's done a lot to contribute to it, but as I say, hopefully she'll get a chance next time as well. However, I am delighted to be joined by, Cordelia Wise and Caroline Jones, who are two of my fellow Stay Nimble career coaches. And we'll meet them in just a moment. But before we go on any further, I just wanted to cover a couple of basic housekeeping rules, if that's okay. You should see a recording sign, so it's just to make everybody aware that this session is being recorded. Everybody who has registered will receive the recording, and for everybody else that is attending, it's quite nice sometimes to watch again and to pick up on things that you might have missed. But because this is a conversation-led webinar, it's really great to see everybody, but if you prefer to have your camera off, then that's absolutely fine. Just switch that video camera off, that's not a problem. What I would ask though is if we can keep the microphones on mute during the presentation. It just cuts down on background noise, and as it is conversation led, there will be opportunity to contribute. If you wish to raise your hand using the emojis, that's fine, we can catch up with you, or please use the chat box as well, and we'll pick those up as we go along or during the Q&A session at the end. So, as I mentioned, I'm joined by Caroline and Cordelia. So we'll just do a very quick formal introduction, if that's okay, and before we get going. So Caroline, could I ask you, please, just to say hi?
Hi everyone, I'm Caroline Jones, and I've now worked as a qualified career coach with Stay Nimble for the last 3 years. Previous to that, I retrained to be a career coach. I'd been running my own recruitment business for 21 years, and I thought it was time for a new challenge. So that's me in a nutshell.
Hey, Cordelia, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody. I'm Cordelia. I'm originally from Canada, as you can hear. And previously, I was working as a manager in the voluntary sector, but had a career guidance background. I've probably the most recent to study of the three of us, and qualified as a career coach, and now work as one for Stay Nimble.
Okay, that's great. Thank you both. And as I said, I'm Jennifer, I'm Head of Coaching here at Stay Nimble, so I lead the team of coaches. All of our coaches, as Cordelia has said, we're all fully qualified career guidance advisors, and we're also all mental health first aid trained. In addition to that, I've also got a counselling qualification, and before retraining as a career guidance advisor, I was a journalist working for national newspapers and magazines. So between the three of us, we've got a wealth of different experiences to bring to the table today. So that's an overview of who we are. I'll just give you a very quick overview of Stay Nimble. For those that aren't familiar with who we are. So Stay Nimble was founded in 2018. We're a social enterprise company, and we deliver on-demand qualified career coaching. And what we have done is we've created a range of bespoke tools, resources, self-development exercises, that are available to those who work through Stay Nimble. And we're very proud of the fact that we've helped more than 18,000 people. In fact, I think today we touched on 19,000 people, which is a huge number. But we work with them on a one-to-one basis. And as I said, the tools that are available online are available to you 24/7, but the beauty of what we do is you're supported all the way through with one-to-one coaching relationship with your coach. You can see at the bottom we've got a host of different awards to our names as well, and yeah, we do encourage everybody to engage with our coach as much as possible, and the coach is able to support you through your own career development journey. And just to give you a little bit of overview of that type of support that you can have, and this is for those who are going through the Stay Nimble MBA that we've mentioned, or those who are just wanting to explore their options, that are maybe feeling stuck, that are thinking of returning to the workplace after a break from, and it can be multiple different scenarios. It might be that you've taken some time out to bring up family. It may be that you've taken some time out to go travelling, or there's had health issues, something of that nature. But everybody who comes to Stay Nimble for support is coming with their own individual set of circumstances, and that's what we as coaches are trained to work with and to support you in terms of making steps that are right for you. So as it says here on the screen, the support we're giving, we're looking at your strengths, we're helping you to identify your skills, we're looking at your values, what's important to you, what it is that you're wanting from your career. We support you to find what your passion is. We all know that if you enjoy your work, then it's easier to get up in the morning and to get in there, and you're also going to be giving more of yourself in that as well. Through your career coaching, we also support you to build your own action plan, and that's for the months ahead, weeks and months ahead, the year ahead and beyond that as well. And as I said, that you're have the backup of all of these online resources that we've created, and they're available 24/7. Your coach is there also to help you stay on track. We're that little person that sits on your shoulder and will send you messages now and they're going to say, I haven't heard from you. How are you? What's happening? Everybody's life goes off a tangent sometimes. We're there to work around that with you and to try to keep you on track. Okay, so a quick look at what we have in terms of agenda today. As I said at the start, the topic is managing social pressures, and we've got 3 key questions that we're exploring here to start with. How do social pressures impact career choices? You'll find out as well as career coaches, social pressures have impacted on us too, so that's relevant to bring in there. How has social pressure affected your choice to do further study, and what social pressures do you experience on a day-to-day basis? So we'll explore those, and then at the end, just to round off, we'll look at some points of advice or observations, suggestions that we can offer in terms of you navigating social pressures on that day-to-day basis as well. If we've got time, and I know we've got roughly about 35 minutes left, if we've got time, hopefully we'll have a Q&A session at the end. But as I said, please feel free to pop questions into the chat box as well, and we'll pick those up as we go along. So I'm just hopefully going to stop sharing my screen. Okay. I can see you all, which is much better. So before we get going with the first question, what I thought it might be worthwhile doing is just explaining what we mean by social pressures. And there's been a lot of research done on this topic, but essentially societal pressure is the influence on an individual, and that can be a group as well, as groups can be influenced by other individuals, groups, or society at large for them to comply with certain behaviours or norms. And this pressure can be through direct orders or requests, and I'm sure we've all had those, or it can be an implicit expectation to conform. So very simple examples of this might be and again, we might all have come across this at different points if we've been on social occasions where we've been encouraged to drink alcohol more than we would normally feel comfortable to do. That's the case of trying to keep up with social pressure in order to fit in. It may be something like feeling compelled to try to keep up with friends, colleagues at work, neighbours even, with regard to things like the clothes that we wear or the type of car that we drive, even if we can't afford it. So again, we're feeling social pressure in that situation. And another key example might be if, and this is one that we've had raised a number of times through the people that we're working with at Stay Nimble. It might be if you have family members who have worked with the same large local employer, for instance, and there's an expectation on you that you're going to follow suit and follow in their footsteps. And that might not necessarily be the right route for you. It might not necessarily be what you want to do, but that can be really tricky to navigate in terms of sticking with what you want and following that pathway. So these are just a couple of examples just to get us going. So taking our first question, which is how do social pressures impact career choices? Personally, I think this is a really, really big one. And as career coaches, I think we will all agree that we work with people every day whose choices have most definitely been impacted by social pressures. And when discussing this beforehand, the three of us chatted about the fact that it doesn't matter what age we are, what gender we are, what our socioeconomic background is, or what our cultural background is. We all face social pressures of some sort or another. So with this in mind, Caroline, I wonder if you would like to kick things off with your own thoughts on this.
Yeah, so when we were talking about this, one of the things that came straight to my mind was our unconsciousness of not knowing what's out there, because we know what's in our own sphere. We know what our friends do, we know what our family do, but there might be areas that we're really interested in, but we just don't have any conscious knowledge of. And I think this is like a real opportunity in career coaching for us to be able to show you more. But I've really seen this with some of the members, clients that I've had, that they haven't looked at areas like maybe health or digital marketing or counselling, or areas that they just weren't aware of what they could do, how they could get involved. Sustainability is one that a lot of people are very interested in, sustainability, but just don't know how to actually use that. And therefore, I kind of see this as a real barrier into people being able to really research what they want to do, because they're just not aware of everything. And I have seen this when I've worked with people, how this can really affect like their self-esteem, because it's like their way of coping. It makes it harder because they feel they don't have the confidence all the time to sort of work this out themselves. And adding to this as well, I think that when you're not finding what you really want to do, this can actually make you feel quite unhappy. And as a career coach, one of the things we really like to do is really find your own values. So, you know, what you personally enjoy doing, what really relates to you, and where your strengths are, to sort of really pull that through. So a great example is, you know, working with somebody who's maybe quite introverted, and they're having a job where they're presenting a lot and feeling really exhausted. Well, actually, if they were doing something where maybe they weren't, they'd be enjoying much more their job and their role. Cordelia, what do you think?
Well, this question made me think about sort of an opportunity to think about ourselves and how we fit into the world in terms of social pressures. So one lovely coaching exercise you can do is called a career genogram. And you essentially draw a family tree of what the other members of your family do. You can go back a couple of generations. You can think about your siblings or your cousins. And you're looking at the jobs they're doing and think about what influence that has had on you and your career thinking. And it's a really good way to give yourself a chance to reflect a little bit about what the social pressures that come with that might be on you and how you might want to navigate those. The other thing it's made me think about is the kaleidoscope theory of careers. Now, the kaleidoscope theory was actually put together with women in mind and based on research with women. And the idea is that you look at your career as if through a kaleidoscope, and that it shifts as your context changes and shifts. And in particular, through three different lenses. So one is authenticity, being true to yourself. One is balance, so balancing work and personal life. So that might be significant others, that might be children, that might be caring for elderly relatives, it might be something else which is going on. And then challenge, so stimulation and career progression. So I think especially when we move on to the next topic around further study, actually that kind of challenge phase might be something that somebody considering further study is well within. But the theory actually says that all three of those elements, so authenticity, balance, and challenge, are all part of our career lens and are all there at the same time. And I certainly recognize them in my own career.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think you're both onto something there with regard to that, and definitely with the career kaleidoscope, I can relate to that as well. And thinking about the career genogram as well, is making me think about my own sort of family tree in terms of careers. And I'm thinking about my mum here, who's a nurse, and who has been desperate for somebody within our family to go into the nursing or medical profession. And that's because her grandfather was a nurse and her uncle was a nurse. So she has this expectation that somebody else is going to follow suit, and pick up on that family tree with regard to that as well. So yeah, it's interesting in terms of how that kind of all plans out as well. But as you say, Cordelia, I think the next question, how has social pressure affected your choice to do further study, is also a really important one here. And again, I've got a couple of examples that I can refer to personally here. The first one being when I was coming out of school, and I had a passion for writing and journalism, and I wanted to go and study journalism, from school, which would have meant, because of where we lived, that I was going to have to move away quite some distance, and obviously at quite a young age. And my parents were quite set against this. So we obviously discussed all the things. There was things like, I was going to have to be paying for the course. How was I going to fund that? I was going to have to be paying rent and sharing a flat, living expenses, travel back and forward, all these kind of things that are obviously really important. But also from that, my parents were really worried about where the jobs would be at the end of that, because they didn't really have much knowledge about media, newspapers, how they operated, where they were based, that sort of thing. So yeah, I had long discussions with them. At the end of the day, I followed my own path, and I went and did it, and ended up with a 20+ year career that I thoroughly enjoyed. So for me, that was the right thing to do. But the more recent example was when I returned to study again in my 40s. When I became conscious, Beth, I can see you waving there. I'm going to bring you, I'm just checking the, oh, right, sorry, you're not having your camera on. Okay, that's fine. I'll check it up with you in a second. When I returned to study in my 40s more recently, and this time I was coming into study with a young child who was at school. I was a single parent. I had a mortgage. I was still going to have to work. I also had a health condition. So I was coming with a very different set of circumstances that I was juggling. And naturally, there was family and friends raised concerns there for me in terms of, was this the right direction? What was I going to do at the end? Where was it going to take me? Could I afford to do this? All of these different things. And at the end, I decided to go my own route. And I'm glad I did, because otherwise I wouldn't be in this job and I wouldn't be speaking to you today. So in both instances, I was told that I was making life hard for myself. And yes, both were very hard, absolutely. But both routes ultimately have made me happy. and have given me lots of fulfillment. So there's a lot in there basically to unpack with that. But Cordelia, I think you have a similar story, certainly with the latter part, albeit not the same. But I wonder if you can kind of give your insight into that too.
I do, but in this case, the voice in my head was my own. So I decided to undertake a master's in my late 40s, and I joined the group thinking, oh my goodness, I am going to be the oldest person in the room. It's going to be a very strange experience. And that was certainly my perception of who would be in the room. And then when I joined my group, actually, I found out that I was bang in the middle age-wise. So I had to challenge my own perceptions of age and, you know, the age to study and so forth, and actually went on to do research on the topic. So that was interesting. But you know, it was a bit of society pressure, but my own pressure on myself was part of it. Caroline, what about you?
Oh, Caroline, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was trying to be well behaved. So I've got a bit of both here. For me as a 14-year-old, I wanted to please my dad and make sure my dad was proud of me. So I chose one of my options to be graphic design, which I really wasn't good at. I really struggled with and left me feeling quite sort of unsatisfied. And it was just messy, if I'm honest. It was a lot of rubbing out a lot of lines and it wasn't great. And I think I really learned from that. And then I went and did things that I really wanted to do. So I worked in travel initially, and then I worked in recruitment. So I worked in things that I really enjoyed, where I could see then I could be successful in. But then I did one of those things which lots of people, and probably myself, never thought I'd do, that I set up and ran a recruitment business, a really successful, award-winning recruitment business in my local area for 21 years. But at the end, it wasn't really hitting my values. I'd changed. I'd grown older. I'd seen things. I'd wanted to do other things. I wanted to challenge myself. So I said to my family, I'm wanting to now become a career coach. And my aunt and uncle, who are in their 70s, were really upset about this and really made quite a to-do about it, and were saying, you know, that I was running away from my business and what was I doing. And so question marks in my head, if I'm honest, about, you know, what should I be doing. But actually the reality was it was 100% the right thing, because it's given me a whole new lease of life, new way of looking at things, and be able to do what makes me happy. So it, you know, I think sometimes it's good to be challenged, but I think sometimes it's good to go with your own gut and make sure that you feel happy about what you've chosen.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And again, it's interesting to note that all three of us have experienced that self-doubt, you know, questioning ourselves, can I do this? And you know, I relate, Cordelia, to what you were saying, is, am I going to be the oldest person in the room? Which, you know, I wasn't either, but I was fully expecting, you know, and that was an issue that I was trying to work around in my own mind as well. And as you say, Caroline, yeah, just getting those family questions and querying and what are you doing? You know, that's hard. That can be really hard. And when that's coming repeatedly to you, you know, it's difficult to see beyond that sometimes. And I think this is where, when you're working with a career coach, you're working with somebody who is impartial, they're not judging you, and they're open to exploring things with you and supporting you to do that. So I think that's where, you know, as I say, working with a coach in that sense, whatever you're doing, whether it is looking at doing further study, if you are looking at doing that MBA, if you're looking at going back to college, university, or if you're looking for that next job move or that career progression within your existing role, it can be hard to get that space in order to explore that fully. So that's what we are here for as well. So let's look on to our next question, which is what social pressures do you experience on a day-to-day basis? And again, this is quite huge. So we don't have time to go into it in the huge detail that we'd like to, so we'll get as much in as we can do. But if I share a couple of examples that we have had expressed from some of the Stay Nimble members that we work with, one is related to my previous own personal situation. Is some have expressed an expectation that coming from school they should be going straight into college or university. And as we know, that's not always the right route for everybody. But some have expressed that they would have had a preference to go straight into a job. And they had found that some people were, sort of questioning that. And they had said that if they had used the phrase, I'm taking a gap year, that would almost be more socially accepted coming straight from school as opposed to going straight into a job, because that was being viewed as not developing in the way that others perceived they should be. However, obviously nowadays we have even more apprenticeships coming through that are doing all of that in one go. So they're learning on the job, they're gaining all that work experience, and they're getting paid. So there's a whole load of development in there. But certainly we've come across a lot of people who have maybe done a degree that they perhaps didn't really want to do. At the end of that 3-4 year period, they're in this situation whereby they're going, I'm not really sure I like this topic, and I'm stuck. I feel like I'm further behind than others. But it's that social pressure that has, on that day-to-day basis, that's forced them to go down that route, or where they felt compelled to. Another example would be around how we look and how we perceive ourselves. And this is where social media has certainly added to that. I know, obviously, what we have to remember is social media, people are just giving a snapshot of their life. That's not the whole person, and it's not their whole life. But this is the perception that we receive through images and through short bursts of content that are shared, and that can impact on us in terms of how we feel about ourselves. That can impact on our self-esteem, and it can also impact on how we view our own progress moving forward, and also how we see our own capabilities and opportunities out there as well. And as women, I think one of our biggest social pressures that we deal with is just with regard to that word managing. And by that, I mean, how are we managing to cope on a day-to-day basis? How are we managing under pressure? How are we managing through things like the menopause? Again, there's social expectations on us. Do we talk about it? Do we not? How are we managing that in social situations? And the big one for me is, how are we managing to juggle kids, juggle work, juggle home, juggle relationship, and juggle social life? And again, all these things are wrapped up in that social media as well, all these images that people are putting out there. And even just saying that out loud, the kids, the work, the home, the relationship, the social life, that's quite overwhelming. That's really quite overwhelming. So it can feel quite huge. If we're questioning ourselves against other people's expectations there as well. Caroline, I know that you've got some thoughts on that too. What would you like to share?
Yeah, when we were chatting about this, Cordelia came up with Keeping Up with the Joneses, and I thought, yeah, that's 100% it. So often, and I'll talk to a member, sometimes we're stuck before we can move forward because I really need to keep up with my friends. Financially, I need to be able to do what they want to do, or I want my career to go faster. And it's like, but do you like the way your career is going? I just need to earn more money. I need to be a manager. My friends are managers now. I need to be a manager. And I think this really made me think this Keeping Up with the Joneses is what can make us feel so frustrated, that we see pictures on social media and you're having a really lousy day and your friends having a great day, they've gone out socially, everything looks lovely. But I think the thing that I kind of really feel from this social pressure is, this is where it's so important that we step out and as career coaches build your own story that is what you want to do, not what you feel you should be doing. And I think this really makes you then believe in the habits that you're creating. If you're studying, you'll study on them, because you know the story you're building is going to make you feel so much happier. So that's what I would say. Don't keep up with the Joneses.
That's good advice. Cordelia, have you got anything you want to add there? Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. I realized I was thinking about social media, particularly in terms of LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is such a useful tool. It's a wealth of information. It's a wonderful place to keep up with people who you've worked with and find out what they're doing, to present yourself. But I sometimes feel that people are thinking about their career 24/7 and over the weekend. And I wonder where they get the time and mental space to interact with LinkedIn quite as much as they do. And since we're talking about careers, you know, it is that sort of, as you say, Jennifer, it's a snapshot of, you know, how your career looks, and certainly doesn't represent everything. But I certainly feel the pressure looking at LinkedIn sometimes. I think the other thing it brings to mind is imposter syndrome, which in a sense is a whole lot of social pressure coming down on you in one go. And I have personal experience of imposter syndrome myself, which really gave me pause to think. And it was this sense of, you know, this is not for the likes of you. Somebody must have made a mistake. This is, you know, surely somebody's going to find me out. All of those feelings are actually social pressures entering into your head in quite a negative way.
I would definitely agree with you on both, and the LinkedIn one in particular. So we've had this conversation before where I've checked it Saturday, Sunday at different points, and you know, there's a new post coming out, and I think, when do these people rest? When do they step back? And you know, and we do talk about taking time to reflect, and it's like this just feels like it is 24/7. You're on that, you know, the hamster wheel there, and that can bring imposter syndrome too, can't it, with regard to that? You know, am I doing enough? Am I being seen to be posting enough online? And all these questions come with that as well. So yeah, I'm totally with you. There's a lot of pressure there in itself. Yeah. So that takes us nicely into our final point, our final question here. And Cordelia, you might want to sort of follow through on that with regard to this. But what advice do we have for navigating those social pressures that we're talking about?
I mean, for me, I think it always starts with self-reflection. And that's something which is really useful to have somebody else to talk to about and talk through. In my case, with imposter syndrome, given the chance to really think about it and reflect and talk it through, I learned an awful lot about myself, which I've been able to work with and work through and sort of move on from. So I suppose all of these things which can feel a bit difficult can also teach us a bit about ourselves. They can be a lesson.
Yeah, that's nice. Okay. For me, I probably have found, yes, it's been a bit of a journey as well. And as you say, it's a learning process. And probably one of the biggest things that I've found for me is to learn how to be kind to myself and to try to lift that pressure on the, and again, we're going to the tyranny of shoulds here in terms of, you know, I should be able to do this and I should be able to do that. And just stepping back from that and saying, well, actually, no, sometimes what I'm doing now is enough, because that's enough that I can manage just now. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to do more in the future, but it's just being kind to yourself and acknowledging how far you have actually come already. And with that also for me comes compassion and exercising compassion towards others, because the likelihood is that they're also feeling pressure as well, and that societal pressure will be impacting them in some way or other. And my other one would be, and Caroline, you touched on this earlier, would be to stay true to your values. I certainly did that, again, when going into journalism and then again retraining in career guidance. And I think from that, if you're experiencing something that makes you feel ill at ease, or if you're on the receiving end of comments that are really sticking with you and making you really question things, then there's generally a reason behind that. And that's why speaking to somebody else and just trying to unpick it ever so slightly can be really, really helpful so that you understand where that discomfort is sitting. And ultimately, just really to understand what you want and what's going to make you happy, ultimately. Caroline, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I have to say I really agree with you with being compassionate and being kind to yourself, because I think that's something that I know personally I can be really hard on myself. And the ideas of what I've come up with, I think things like really goal setting, but being kind, not setting goals that are just ridiculous. What are short-term goals that are achievable? What are long-term goals that are achievable? Yeah, make it so that you've got something to go for, but make it realistic, make it kind, make sure it really means that you still can have a life. And especially with something like studying, I've done a lot of studying when I've also worked. And I think one of the most important things is that you're kind to yourself and giving yourself that space. Don't try and do it every night, and don't say you're never going to go out on a Friday night or whatever, because it's not true. You are. But the thing is, if you make that space and you do it, then you feel really good. You can see that you're developing and that you're growing. I think the other thing I was going to say is setting boundaries. So probably something I've also been really bad at is actually setting really good boundaries of what I'm prepared to talk to people about. Probably more open to sort of talking lots to people rather than maybe really good people to talk to about boundaries. And I think that then links into your networking group. If you're going on to study or you're going on to do some change, think about who you're talking to. Who is really going to be motivating you? Who's really going to look after you? Not who's going to all the time going to be, well, why are you doing that? And do you really think that's for you? Think of that, because I think that can make a big difference in how your week's gone, rather than feeling that you're having to work through this. And that can feel really sticky, rather than having the energy to keep studying or to keep developing. So that would be my sort of thoughts from what we've said today.
No, that's great. Thank you for that. So really, in essence, we're looking at a combination of things here, aren't we, with regard to being kind to yourself, being realistic, as you say, and giving yourself space, using your network, and as Cordelia says, learning from it as you go, and reflecting on what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what you're gaining from that as you go. Okay, so that sounds. I'll certainly take something from this as well, because it's helpful to chat it through as well. So we've got about 5 minutes left, so we do have time for a bit of discussion or questions if anybody who's attending wants to throw anything into the pot for conversation. If not, I do have a question that somebody sent to me beforehand who wasn't able to attend today, but is there anybody that wants to throw anything in or throw any comments in about anything we've said or query? If so, just feel free to unmute yourself if you do. Nope, nobody brave enough. Okay. I'll give you the question that I was sent earlier from, as I say, one of our Stay Nimble members who wasn't able to attend. So I'm pressing it down here. So the question, well, more of a point was, I always wanted to go away to study and to feel that freedom that some of my friends got, but I've always felt like I was being disloyal to my family if I didn't follow their advice and stay close to home. How do I manage that? So I was having a think about this, and Cordelia and Caroline, you may want to jump in here, but for me, with that, I would want to know what you felt you were missing out on, and what does that freedom actually represent to you? What does it look like? And I would want to explore that in terms of to look at how you can achieve that sense of freedom that you're looking for. Is it possible? What compromises would you need to find along the way? Yes, this might confuse or upset some of those people around you, but perhaps by understanding what you want and being able to explain it, then that might gain their support. Because ultimately I would assume that they want to see you happy as well. Yes, so I guess if you can explain your reasons, then that's half the battle with that. If they don't support you in your decisions along that route, then hopefully they would come round in time. If they do actually see you feeling happier and maybe taking steps in a direction that's going to give you that fulfillment that hopefully they have achieved in the jobs that they're doing or the study that they've done. But it's really looking after you and staying true to your values, I would suggest. I don't know if anybody else wants to throw something in there.
No, I agree with you, Jennifer. I think if you're staying at home or if you're going away, I think there is that point of how you're building your life. Is it that you're wanting to leave home because you want to set up new social groups, or you want to join new things, or you want to cook your own food, or you want to have a different routine in your life? And actually, is that something you can make at home? Is it just that at the moment you're working within a different sort of barrier situation, and actually it comes back to sort of maybe seeing if you can change them things? Is it that really you want to go to the gym between 5 and 6 and your mum puts dinner on the table at 6 o'clock and you've got to eat it? Is there a way of kind of changing that, or do you do that yourself? Is that something that you've got in the habit of doing, that I eat at 6 but actually it'd be so much better if I went to the gym first and then and I think that with study as well, how does that best fit in, or when is it best to kind of have those conversations with your family, or when is it best for you to learn? When do you learn best? And is that one of the reasons why you're looking? Do you just find that it's difficult to learn at home? Would it be better that you went somewhere to study? Are you better working actually in a coffee shop or a library or something like that? That would be my thoughts.
Yeah.
Mine was very similar. So I very often say to members and clients, there's no law that says, and it might be that you think that to go away to study represents freedom, but actually it might be sometimes that's just not possible for financial reasons, for practical reasons. So sometimes it can be useful to look at what that means to you and see, as I think you've said, Caroline, as well, how you can incorporate that into your life in different ways.
So it sounds like we're coming back to those boundaries, that boundary setting, isn't it? Where it's a case of looking at what we want and, as you say, really exploring what we want to gain out of changes that we're making in our lives. And that's as relevant to moving away for a job as it is to even undertaking study at home or going away for study as well, because there's lots of changes that knock on from that. So yeah, okay, no, that's interesting. Okay, so is there anything else that MD wants to throw in before we finish up? Take this opportunity. No, we're all happy. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us today for this discussion. I hope it's been helpful in terms of understanding social pressures that we all face, and perhaps gaining a few tips in terms of how to acknowledge and to manage those social pressures as well. Feel free to get in touch with your coach if you're working with one, or if you've got any comments you want to make, then you can email those to us as well at info@staynimble.co.uk. And obviously, MD who's not registered with Stay Nimble, if you're wishing to come on board and experience coaching, then you can do so at staynimble.co.uk. And we offer a free 30-minute discovery call with your coach as well to get you started. So thank you again for taking part in this webinar, and we hope to see you at the next one. So bye for now.
Bye.